Alrighty folks, so our next video is going to be a quick run through of all our basic chords that we're going to play on the guitar so we can learn to actually start using them and that we can start learning to play with them. Now everybody should recognize this. This is what's called a guitar chord chart. People get confused by it, but it's basically, it's the same thing as what you're seeing on my guitar with the neck pointed up. So this thicker black bar at the top represents this thick white bar at the top of your guitar neck. And so we can see here the strings are going this way. This is our first string, which is the E on the E major chord, which is open, right? Now the second string is taken on by a finger on the second fret. That's what this dot represents. That's this finger. The third string is taken on the second fret by another finger. That's this one right here. And then our fourth string is taken on the first fret by one finger as well. That's this finger here. And then the last two are open. That's the B and the E. The last two strings are open, which is what these O's at the top represent. And so that is basically what these guitar chord charts are. Another thing about these guitar chord charts are these numbers at the bottom, which are also very important, because they are showing you what finger, these numbers on the bottom, they're showing you what number of your fingers are on the chord. See, our fingers are all numbered just for a matter of convenience in guitar playing. This is our first finger, which is our pointing finger. This is our second finger, our finger number 2. This is our third finger, finger number 3. And then this is our fourth finger, our pinky. Sorry for swearing at you there, by the way. So on our E major chord, our second finger, that's why this 2 is here. Our second finger is on the second string on the second fret. Our third finger is on the third string on the second fret as well. And then our first finger, our pointing finger, is on the first fret of the fourth string. That's this one right here. And that's why these chord charts are so necessary and so useful, is because you've got everything you need to know what the chord is going to translate to on the guitar. And so we're going to play through a few of these, and we're going to, I guess, we'll play through them all. So this is our E major chord. You can see that on my guitar. And I've already told you the finger position, so we'll just go to the next chord, which is our E minor. Now it's got that darker sound. It's used in a lot of songs. So our E minor is open on the E string. The second finger is on the second fret of the second string, and then our third finger is on the second fret of the third string, the D string. And so that makes up the E minor chord. Very dark chord. So next is our A major chord. Now, a lot of people suggest using on the A chord to use your top 3 fingers, the 1, 2, and 3, but I prefer to use the 2, 3, and 4 just because it's kind of more proper form. Most guitar teachers that I've ever talked to have always taught this form of the A. Really, it doesn't matter, I guess, in the end, but I would suggest using this one, especially because using this style of A, where you're using your fourth finger, the pinky, it reinforces your fourth finger because you don't use that finger a lot in chords, and so you still want that pinky to get strengthened as a guitarist. And so, yeah, this is our A major chord. The second finger is on the second fret of the third string. That's that one. Our third finger is on the second fret of the fourth string. That's that one right there. And then our fourth finger is on the 2nd fret of the B string, of the 5th string. That's that guy right there. And that makes up our A major chord. Now, if we want to do our A minor chord, all we've got to do is take this, our 4th finger, which is on the 2nd fret, we're going to release that, and we're going to put our 1st finger, coming from the A chord, on the 1st fret of the B, which is the C note, turning that A major chord into an A minor. And so that's what's represented here. We can see that our 2nd finger is on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, 3rd finger, 2nd fret of the 4th string, and then our 1st finger is on the 1st fret of the B string, making that dark A minor sound. So our next chord is our D major. And that's what our D major looks like. We can see the finger positions right here. Now this is the first time we've seen one of these X's. That X means that you want to avoid that E string like the plague. Like you want to get as far away from it as possible, because if you have that E string in there, it's going to make that dissonant sound and you don't want it. So a lot of people put their thumb here to kind of help mute it, but I wouldn't suggest that for a beginner. So for now, we've got our D chord. Make sure you never ever hit the low E string on a D chord, no matter what. It's not part of the chord. So we've got our 1st finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string, the G string. We've got our 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the B string, which is what that 3 represents, and that's that finger there. And then we've got our 2nd finger on the high F sharp note, which is the 2nd fret of the high E string. Everybody can see that, right? That's what that chord is. And so that's our D chord, D major. And so from the D major, we go into our D minor chord. So that's our D minor. As we can see, that X is still there because it doesn't belong in the D minor chord either. And so our first 2 strings are open like the D. Our 2nd finger is now on the 2nd fret of the 4th string, which is the G. That's this guy right here. Our 3rd finger is still on the same place, on the 3rd fret of the B string, the 5th string down. And then our 1st finger has replaced the finger that was here and has gone onto the 1st fret. That's a pretty popular chord as well. But that is our D minor chord right there. And so, yeah, that's our D minor. And that's what this, whenever you see a D with this little M, by the way, that little M represents minor in every chord. Whoa! Sorry about that. Now our next chord, I guess we'll go, alright. So this is our C major chord. I'm going to explain later that I prefer to do the 4-fingered C, and I'll explain how to do that chord in the next lesson. Why it sounds better, and it just sounds fuller because you're adding that extra string. But a lot of beginner guitarists can't play it. So if you're just learning to play guitar for now, if you want, you can learn how to play this 3-fingered C because you want to learn to be able to use it as a jammer. So we can see that the second, well, first of all, there's an X on the E string, just like there was for the D chord, because that low E note does not belong in a C chord, no matter what. We've got our 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. That's this guy right here. We've got our 2nd finger, that's what this 2 represents, on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. That's that guy. And then our G string is open. That's what that O is. We've got our first finger on the first fret of the B string, which is the C note, and then the last note is open as well. And that's our C chord. That's another hugely popular chord, obviously. And then after that, we have our G chord. This is everybody loves the G chord. So the E string, our second finger, our middle finger, is on the third fret of the low E string, which is the low G note. That's what that note is. Our first finger is on the second fret of the second string. That's that guy. And then our third finger is on the third fret of the high E. That's that guy right there. And that makes up our G major. All the notes in between are all open. Oh, a little bit of that. Sorry about that. So now this chord is when it starts to get really tricky. This chord is the F major chord. And so I'm going to teach you the four-fingered F chord for now, because it's a hard chord either way, but it is more proper that you learn the four-fingered F chord first. So we have an X, just like we did with the three-fingered C and our D chord, which means we can't hit that low E string no matter what, and so we'll just ignore it like the plague. So this is our first chord where we're going to be using all four fingers. Not only that, but there is a bar in this chord. And when you bar the strings, like some chords you can do, you're going to bar the whole fret like that. That's like a barred G chord. But for this bar, we're just going to bar these two notes, which is the first fret of the B and the first fret of the high E string. Okay? So that's what this little line means, is that we're barring those two notes. And so we're going to have our third finger on the third fret of the second string. That's that guy right there. And then we're going to have our fourth finger on the third fret of the third string. That's that guy right there. And so that's that. That's our fourth finger on the third fret of the third string. And then we have our second finger on the second fret of the fourth string, G. And then we've got our first finger taking up not only the first fret of the B string, but the first fret of the E string, so the one is there twice. It's a bit of a tricky chord to get, especially at first for beginners. I guess, I'll show you in case that chord is a little bit too impossible for you at the start. Don't feel bad about it. Just learn this style of F. Now, let's pretend that there are two X's on the chord. So this string, instead of having the third finger there, you have the third finger on the third string on the third fret, which is that one right there. Yeah. And so we ignore the first two strings and we just hit the F chord like that. If you want to do the F chord that way, then you certainly can. As long as you're playing the darn thing. That's really all that matters for now. Now our next two chords are kind of funky as well. Now, the B, you can only play it as a bar chord, so I won't show you that for now. I won't torch you with that yet. But the B7th is a common chord to use in a lot of songs, and you'll probably find that as you're playing. So I will teach you guys that. There's an X here, which means we can't play that low E. And this is a four-fingered chord as well. Our second finger is on the second string on the second fret. That's that one right there. Our first finger is on the third string, the first fret. That's that finger there. Our third finger is on the second string of the fourth oh, I'm sorry, it's on the 4th string, it's on the 2nd fret. So that's that 3rd finger right there. And then the B string is open, obviously, because it's a B chord, right? And then our 4th finger is taking that high F sharp, which is on the 2nd fret of the high E string. And so that's the chord that we get right there. That's a chord, usually when you go to a B, when you have a 7th, it means you're going to go back to the root chord, which in this case is the E, you know? And so that... See, that kind of sounds natural going from the B7th to the E major chord. And that's why I'm teaching you guys to do that B7th. You'll probably find it quite a bit, especially, obviously, in songs that are in the key of E. And so our next chord is going to be our B minor. Now, I'm going to teach you how to do probably something of a more proper B minor. But for now, we're just going to learn to do it this way. Because this is kind of like the easy version of the B minor. Now we have, just like the 3-fingered F chord, we've got 2 X's here, and we don't want to play those 2 lower strings. All we want to hear is our 3rd finger on the 4th fret of the 3rd string, which is that guy right there, and we've got our 4th finger on the 4th fret of the 4th string. That's that guy right there. And then we've got our 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the B string, the 5th string. And then we've got our 1st finger on the 2nd fret of the highest E string. And that's our little B minor chord, if you can see that, right? And so, ladies and gentlemen, we have our basic guitar chords. So now that I've given you that run through, start looking for songs of your own that you can play with these chords. Simple songs, simple 3-chord songs, anything that'll start to get you some kind of rhythm. Anything that can get you, anything like that can, with the simple chords, just so you start to get a sense for it, you know, that first jamming sort of instinct. And then we're just going to build it as we go along. In our next lesson, I'm actually going to go in depth into each chord, into the color of it, into the context that you would be using it a little bit, and we're going to go a lot more in detail into each chord. So I guess peace and love, and I'll see you until then.